Welcome to Season 5 of the Irish Baptist College podcast, Let's Talk. I'm your host, Davy Ellison. I serve as Director of Training at the Irish Baptist College, and the college, through theological education, seeks to magnify Christ, advance the gospel, and strengthen the church. In this series of podcasts, we're talking about all things new. Over the past year, there's been a lot of change in the college with a lot of new beginnings, and we're going to explore some of this in this series of podcasts. And the hope is that what you will hear will encourage you in your faith, that it might elicit further support for the college, and perhaps it might even tempt you into studying with us in some way. And to help us with that today is Debbie McLaughin, or Debs McLaughlin, or Deborah McLaughlin. I'm not quite sure how you want me to go with your first name.
Not Deborah, because I sound like I'm being told off, but depends where I am, Debbie or Debs.
We'll go for Debbie. Great to have you with us today, Debbie. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you.
I know you're really excited about this. So
very much so, especially the fact it's being videoed.
Great. So we'll dive in. Introduce yourself, Debbie. So family, interests, home church, maybe particularly role in the college, because you're filling a new role in the college, but I'll let you share about that, and then I'm going to press you on an interesting fact after all of that. So introduce yourself.
Okay, so I have Debbie or Debs. I am the youngest of three girls. I'm not married and I live near my parents, so I still benefit greatly from that. Interest first has to be big Arsenal supporter. I love my sport in general. Used to be able to play it, not so much now, so just watching that. But I love Arsenal men and women's teams, so try to get over to some matches throughout the year. At home, I like to catch up with friends, have walks beside the sea. That calms me down a bit. But my home church is Newtownards Baptist, and I've been there now for 19 years.
Wow.
So for the last 18 years, I've been a PE teacher up in Glengormley. But over the last 7 years, I went down to part-time teaching Monday and Tuesdays, but also then took up a role within the church. Mm-hmm. So I'm church administrator and coordinate the work of children and youth. So there's quite a lot going on there, yeah. On the 3 days. And then at the end of June, I finished teaching, which was good. So instead of going to teach, I now come to the college here. And as you say, it's a new role in the college. So with validation with Spurgeon's, we now have to hold our own policies here, data system, virtual and learning environment. So I'm responsible for that. So there's been a lot of learning over the last couple of months taking place.
For all of us.
But we're learning slowly and we're getting there with God's help. So that's sort of the role within the college.
Great. Which has the title of Academic Administrator.
Yes.
Which is great. You've been a great help coming in, helping us get all this stuff up and running with the new academic year just started. So
thank you.
It's been great to have you. You mentioned going to see Arsenal matches. Favourite match that you've been in? Well, Highbury or the Emirates? I
would probably have to say the Emirates.
Okay.
It was a game where we'd been over in London for a week. We were playing West Ham. You would expect to win that. So it was 0-0 until the 88th minute. And Alex Song put the ball in the net, to which I turned round and my mum was being hugged and jumped up and down by the man behind her. So it was just the whole stadium was going mad. And I suppose that is a standout moment of that. So,
great. I was going to make some comment about being fluky about the end of a match, but being a Man United fan, I can't really say anything about scoring late. So yeah. Okay, great. What about interesting fact? Unless an Arsenal fan is your interesting fact, but give us an interesting fact.
Well, this was probably one of the hardest because I thought, how am I interesting? But I think I've been able to travel quite far and wide in the world, and I've just loved to see different cultures. So maybe from being in the Amazon jungle, got up a river on a boat, to Papua New Guinea, flying over it into tribes there, to Brazil, or I've already said Brazil, Australia, New Zealand, to Canada, and in all that, I've never claimed or benefited from an air mile. So even though I've travelled, I've no benefit from it in that, but lots of memories to share.
So you've travelled much further than I had realised. Okay, so I harbour an ambition of setting foot on every continent, and I feel like you're beating me now on this. So you've been to Europe?
Yes.
You've been to North America?
Yes.
Been to South America?
Yes.
Have you done Africa?
Yes, Kenya last summer.
You done Asia then?
Yes.
And you've done Australia?
I have.
Oh, you've done 6 out of the 7, so Antarctica is the last one.
It is, but I think that's a bit out of my reach. But it's good to have friends in far off places, Davey, who open up their homes, I must say.
Well, I need to talk to you about getting to Asia and Australia. They're the 2 I need to do. So, great. Thank you.
Make it.
Also important, and amongst all of those fun facts, interesting things, is your relationship with Christ, your conversion experience. Maybe you could share a little bit just about your conversion experience for us.
Yeah. Okay, so I had the real privilege of being brought up in a Christian home where I knew from a very early age that I had sin in my life. I'd done things wrong against God. But that I also knew that God had provided a way of salvation through Jesus dying on the cross. And I knew that if I truly repented of that sin, that I could be forgiven. But even at a very young age, I knew that if the car was to crash, Mum and Dad would go to heaven and I would go to hell.
Yeah.
And I knew that. And in a simple childlike faith, as children, we go, yeah, God is able to do that. You know, and it's as you get older, you start to question things. But in that simple childlike faith, I asked the Lord to come into my life, and by His grace He did, and that He has kept me, and I'm so thankful for His guidance and protection throughout my life and His faithfulness to me. And as I say, I got saved, it was just before I went to primary school. Okay. But then when I was 9, my sister was in a really serious car accident, and we didn't know if she was going to survive. And when we knew that she was going to live, it was then we thought she was going to lose her leg. So we had left her at the hospital that night, thinking she was going to have her leg amputated. And as a 9-year-old, that was quite hard to see and to deal with.
Yeah, for sure.
But I remember just leaving to go and stay with a family in Cork, and Dad just saying to the man, people are praying for us all over Ireland. And I felt that night just the peace of God in the midst of that situation. And that was the first time I really remember just that peace and just how God worked through that situation. And that really spoke to me. And then when I was 13, Dad was a pastor in Dromore, and we were moving to Mullaghmeen, about 90 mile away, leaving friends, family behind. I had to go to an all-girls school from playing football. And I questioned God as to why. Why are we going from the March to the September? But I remember going on the Sunday morning, it was a man out of church just gave me a small gift card with Joshua 1:9 written on the inside. And that's became my favourite verse. Have I not commanded you, be strong and of good courage? Do not be afraid, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. And that's just been really important in my life. So any new challenge that comes up, any new place I go, I know that God is going there with me. And I'm just so thankful to have had the Lord in my life and just for His faithfulness to me over the years. And even though I mess up a lot and the sinfulness is still there within me, we have a faithful God. Yeah. And I'm so thankful for that. Wow. And just for being with me throughout it all.
Great. Excellent. Obviously our Christian testimony doesn't end with our conversion. There's a Christian life that comes after that. You've alluded to that a little bit, different things that you've experienced. And one of our key aims here in the college as well is not just theological education, but spiritual formation, Christian growth, development in the Christian life. Are there individuals who have been particularly influential in your spiritual growth? You can name them or you can't name them, either way, up to you. You don't have to name them. But what I would like to know is what in particular did they do that was actually of great benefit to you in your spiritual life? Yeah.
I think God uses people at different times in our lives to just speak in. And I suppose for me, as I've already said, my parents have been huge in that. I'm so thankful for them. They've stuck me very well over the years. But they've just lived as a really good example in all different situations that life brings to you. Yeah. And sometimes as teenagers we think our parents are really strict and, why are they making that decision or why can't I go there? But when you look back, they were making decisions for our good and, trying to lead you in the right way. So I'm so thankful for their prayers, for how I can have open conversations with them, how at the end of that, I know they're still going to pray for me, they're still going to love me. So I would say my parents, and also my dad was my pastor for 34 years. And although he was your pastor and your dad, he was still able to teach me from God's word, and that was important as well. And then I'm going to say, Davey, my church families had a huge impact. And they're full of individuals, all different ages. You might not necessarily meet those people in other spheres of life.
For sure.
Have this automatic bond in Christ, and that's something that's really special. So as I say, we moved to McLaughlin when I was 13, and that was a difficult time.
Which is where?
For me, in Enniskillen.
Enniskillen, for those who don't know. Yes. So that's where it is, yeah. I
love as you come out the front door, you're just looking at fields and sheep and a rugby club across the road. But even though it was difficult, you've got that in Proverbs where it says, the heart of man plans his way, but the Lord establishes his steps. And he certainly knew what was best for me. So I didn't want to be on my own as a 13-year-old when mum and dad went to the prayer meeting. I didn't want to be in the house on my own. So I went to the prayer meeting, and it was the back room up there in McLaughlin where I believe I spiritually matured. Studying the Bible, not as a child anymore, but as an adult. People coming each week in their individual lives with just a real openness to share what was going on in their life.
Yeah.
For personal prayer requests, for praying maybe for neighbours, for maybe an exam that they would have or a job interview, praying for their families, praying for tragedies maybe in the county as well. You know, it was a time where we could really laugh together, but you cried together, you prayed together. And even as a 13-year-old, I could see just how God was using the importance of the prayer meeting for the church in coming together in that. And that was that stood out in my life. But they let me be me. I was no longer a pastor's daughter. They just let me be me. But they prayed for me. They encouraged me. They supported me, challenged me when I needed it. And I actually got baptised and became a member when I was 14. And it was just that real love for the church and for the people. And I could just see how God was working. And that was where I first got involved through their encouragement in children's work and youth work. I don't know what that would have looked like back then, but they encouraged me. By teams, camps.
Great.
Even on the side of sports pitches, they were there.
Yeah.
You know, so it was just, you were able to live life with them. And that really impacted. And I don't think we should ever underestimate the influence you can have on other people in your church just by living your life.
And just by being present and being there.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure your presence as a 13-year-old at the prayer meeting was a huge encouragement to everybody else, as much as they encouraged you in the way they interacted with you.
Absolutely. And even today, whenever I see the children of the young people coming in, it really is an encouragement. And then, as I say, we then moved to Newtownards, where he gave me another spiritual church family. And I knew to trust the Lord this time after see what he had done for McLaughlin. And they've just really helped me to even grow further in my faith. You know, then you're at the workplace, different timing of your life. But just to see examples of faithful prayer warriors, you know, cheerful givers, your committed members, and those who've been in the mission field that have give up everything. So many people will know James and Dory Gunning, and to sit with Dory coming up their 90th birthday, and she allowed me just to talk to her, take her experience in life and tell the children, and to see the children's faces on the Friday at the kids club as she walked through the door, and just have those memories past their bars, you know, his godliness, his prayers for people, just from a real heart felt for them. And then just people, even in my role within the church, that have just got alongside, spent time with me, whether it's a text message, a card of encouragement, and something so small can have such a big impact on your life. So, and then I'm coming to an end now. Christian friends, just good Christian friends to live life with, and God can just use them and just to help each other and encourage each other. It has to be two-way.
Definitely.
In all of those relationships. But God has really used people to help me to grow in my faith.
Such an encouragement. There are listeners who are part of a local church and think nothing spectacular happens, but actually just being there, being present and being part of each other's lives does have a great influence.
Absolutely.
Great.
Yeah.
What about books? We've talked about people. What about books? 2 or 3 books that have really been influential in your spiritual growth? And maybe, again, just what in particular about those books have encouraged you in your Christian life?
Well, firstly, the Bible. It has to be. It's our guidebook for life. It's what God has revealed to us. But I must say I'm not a great reader to read loads of books. But I love how the Bible, we have it in our own language, and we've got other things to help us as well. How, sermons on a Sunday can help us. We have those books to go alongside, study guides, even being involved in children and youth work, and you're preparing that talk, and just for what you can learn through the Bible.
For yourself,
and how, with God's help, you can't do it on your own. So I definitely thank the Lord for giving us his word that we can go back to. And just the fact that in such a changing world, we have an unchangeable God and his word never changes, and how it's so relevant today.
Yeah.
So often we pick up the Bible with things going on in our lives, and we just see God speaking through that, and that is obviously my first one. Then another one, another book would be the Charles Swindoll series, Great Lives.
Okay.
So I started to read these at the end of university and going into the workplace. So again, a change in life circumstances.
Yeah.
And to be able to study these characters just in more depth. And each person that's mentioned in the Bible, God has them there for a reason, even if it's just their name, and to see some of these people, their strengths, their weaknesses, but a lot of time, how they messed up, but God was faithful.
Yeah.
And that was something that no matter what life was going to bring to me, to be faithful to God, and he will be faithful to me. So that was what I learned through that. And then the books, Jen Wilkins' books.
Okay, yeah.
So she was over at Belfast Irish Women's Convention a few years ago, and that was the first time I'd ever heard her. But just to see her real love for the Bible, her real love for God, how in her books her focus is on Christ, it's giving him the glory in a way that we can understand. And even to listen to some of her podcasts, it's just making complicated things in the Bible sound simpler, just that background, and just how God can use people like that to help us as well to grow. But her books, I know, have been a real encouragement to me, and anybody that you recommended them to, I've also enjoyed them. So, yeah.
Excellent. You've definitely cheated there, because you picked a Chuck Swindoll series, and then Jen Wilkin, both of whom have plenty of books, so
none like him and in his image.
But that's really helpful.
For Jen Wilkin. And the Joseph book I really liked with Charles Swindoll, and I just love that story. And I love, we did this with our youth last year, just to draw at the end, that graph where Joseph's up and down in life, but just that God was constantly there. So they would be.
Well, that's really helpful. I think that's a big mistake that whenever we think about character studies, we focus so much on the character instead of thinking about, well, what about God's activity in their life? So it's really helpful corrective. And amen to Jen Wilkin. Lots of great material there from her, which is excellent. Okay, you'll be glad to know that we're nearing the end.
You'll be glad too, David.
You can soon relax. But I want to end by asking a couple of questions, just seeking advice. So maybe someone's listening to this podcast and they're thinking, well, I want to experience this in my life, whether that's being an influence on others or others being an influence on me. So I'm going to ask for some advice on that front. So can you offer one piece of advice for an individual who's seeking someone to disciple them, to guide them, to teach them? Okay, someone's listen to you talking about the great spiritual influences in your life, and they're like, I want people like that. Yeah. How do I find them?
Well, this is maybe a little bit like the series where I was so specific, but the big thing is pray. Okay. And I would say pray for someone who is going to point you to their Saviour. It's not about that person.
Yeah.
It's what Christ has done for them. And pray that it's the right person to influence you in your life. Yeah. You might be drawn to someone because of personality but you want God's influence to be right
for sure.
Within that. Just someone who loves the Lord, loves his word. They're living a Christ-like life. But when you see, as we've said there, they're going to mess up. They're going to make mistakes. But even through that in their lives, you can see God working and how God's teaching through that. And just through their experience of up and down, they can prove the faithfulness of God. And we shouldn't stop wanting people to guide us and disciple us and teach us, so it's not something for young people. But how can we be that influence then on people of different ages?
Great. Excellent. And then the flip side of that coin, so offer one piece of advice for an individual seeking to be a godly influence on others. So maybe someone who's been a Christian a long time, mature Christian, they think, I've probably not done enough of this. So what's my first step in trying to influence others in a good godly way, trying to pass on some of the things I've learned from others? What advice would you give them?
same as the last time, pray. But be that person that you're praying for to influence you. So that God would use you to be an influence, that he would show you who to be an influence to, and pray for that. The Bible commands us to go and make disciples, and just encourage, pray for people. Maybe people are already involved in children and youth work or the women's work or something else in their church. Just do that with a servant heart and pray that God would then give you opportunities to just influence people even in that. It doesn't need to be something that you go out as a standout thing and how am I going to do this? I think it's, as you said, being present at the prayer meeting and, living life. But just then seeking those people who you can just speak into their life and just help in other ways. But it's, as well as that, I'd say be real with them. The Christian life isn't easy. Let them see that. It's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult. But even though there's plans that you mightn't understand in your life, be real about that and just help people see that. But through that, point to God and how you're trusting in his plans, even though you don't understand them sometimes. But that's something that I would say. And, if you're seeking to be that person, God will use you and he will help you to be an influence on other people.
Amen. Yeah, definitely. Great. Thank you, Debbie. Thank you so much for your time. You're part-time with us, part-time with the church. You're probably cramming full-time work to both of those roles. We've been so grateful to have you about the building, and just want to encourage our listeners to pray for Debbie as she continues to settle into that role. But it's been great to have you with us, and thank you for your time today on the podcast. Thank you to our listeners for listening to Let's Talk. The Irish Baptist College is committed to training men and women for gospel service here in Ireland and across the globe. If you're interested in preparing for ministry at a theological college that is academically rigorous and vocationally focused, then I want to invite you to explore the opportunities available to study theology with us here. You can do so by visiting the website irishbaptistcollege.org, where you can find out more. You also go to our events page. You'll see that we have open events planned for January and February, and all of the other information that you need about studying with us is there. Thanks for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you next time.